As much as I love to make dedicated videos for very specific niche romance tropes, you guys know like my end all be all is always just finding new romance books that you guys haven't read yet. So I wanted to make a video of just underrated romance books, books that I love that I've just noticed I have not seen a lot of people talk about, or I feel like they just haven't gotten their flowers. Maybe there isn't a ton of reads on Goodreads that I've noticed. So I tried to keep this video to books with 15,000 or less reviews on Goodreads. Most of them have less than 10,000. There's really only one that had, I think, 15. So these are books that I feel like I don't see a lot of online, and I think they deserve more love. So they're all just random tropes. We'll get into it. I'm excited to share them with you. First book on my list being 1111 by Macaulay Smeltzer. This is such a good one. This is actually a reverse age gap book. So the woman is older than the man in the book. And I guess this book would also be considered dad's ex because she dates his dad before she dates him. So this book follows Reed and Via. Via is a recent divorcee, and she decides to move to Maine to finally pursue her lifelong dream of opening an art gallery. Her relationship with her ex was very toxic, and she never really felt like she could be her true self. So this is her finally like taking over her life, doing what she wants. She doesn't really want to have any distractions or any men in her life. She's just not really in the mood for any of that. But on a random night out, she ends up meeting this boy Reed, who I believe is celebrating his 21st birthday, and he's immediately obsessed with her, immediately drawn to her, and they end up going home together and having a one-night stand. But she's like, this can't go any further. It has to end here. Via swearing off men is obviously easier said than done, as she gets asked on another date by this man, ends up going, and later finding out that this is Reed's father. And she really can't stop thinking of Reed. This date with the father is just not really doing it for her. And then he finds out that she's on this date with his dad, and he's like, what? Like, I thought you liked me. I thought we had a connection. And it kind of just goes from there. I really loved this book. I loved the relationship between Via and Reed. The reverse age gap dynamic is always interesting to me. I feel like I haven't read a ton of books with that, but I really loved how emotionally mature and just balanced the relationship felt despite their age difference. So you have an 11-year age gap, hence 1111. But I just love this book. I loved the storytelling of it. I love Macaulay. I feel like all of her books have just a really fun and interesting plot that kind of just grabs you in immediately. So highly recommend this one. I absolutely loved it. Next book on my list is The Mating Game by Lana Ferguson. Now, if you guys haven't heard of this one, this might sound a little crazy. So just bear with me. Bear with me when I tell you that this is a wolf shifter omegaverse book. Okay, so either that sounded like I was speaking a different language, or you're immediately like enthralled and you want to read it. So to give you like an extremely basic rundown, in this world, there are humans and there are wolf shifter humans, and you are either an omega, a beta, or an alpha. Okay, and in this book we have Tess and Hunter. Now Tess has always thought she's a beta, which is just like normal human. She's never thought she's a wolf shifter, but she ends up being a later presenting omega. Okay, and when you present as an omega, your body goes through an array of changes, and she's recommended to not go around any alphas because they can kind of mess up with your chemistry and it can create a whole slew of problems. So she goes to the doctor and he's like, just try to stay away from any alphas. You'll get through this. It's fine. But Tess is currently on her way to Colorado to do a renovation for an inn because she's really into home renovation, and her biggest goal is to be on a home renovation television show. And they told her that if she can improve herself by doing this inn, that she can be on this show. And she really needs to get on the show because there's a financial incentive and her family needs money. So she shows up to this inn, and who owns this inn but this grumpy man named Hunter? And Hunter is an alpha, okay? So she doesn't really understand this whole alpha omega situation, wolf shifter situation, because it's so new to her. But he definitely understands, and her body starts having these changes. There's all these issues. And like I mentioned, Hunter is just this grumpy guy. He doesn't even want her to do the renovations on the inn, but he has no other choice. It's like his family's inn. And yeah, basically the story goes from there with her figuring out herself with the wolf shifting stuff, and then also this whole renovating the inn situation, how their relationship kind of forms. There's a lot going on. If you're new to Omegaverse, this is definitely a little bit complicated to get into, but I will say Lana Ferguson explains it in a way where or if you're a beginner, it's not as complicated as it might seem. And she also has a lot of like lists that explain certain words and what certain things are. I myself am still kind of getting into this whole omegaverse in mainstream romance books. I've read a lot of fan fiction that has omegaverse, but not a lot of actual books. So it's interesting. I don't know. I find it to be a fun switch up from the average just contemporary romance novel. And I think Lana does a really good job of writing it. So if this sounds like it could be a fun read, definitely check it out. She does also have other books that have omegaverse. She has The Fake Mate, so you can check that one out too. But this one was definitely my favorite. Next up on my list, we have Duplicity by Elodie Hart. This is the second book in her Seraph series, but it can be totally read as a standalone. I've read the whole series, and this one is definitely my favorite. This series follows a bunch of women who work for an executive assistant slash escort business. So they're basically like full service assistants. They do whatever their boss needs them to do, but they're very high paid. These women often get to work in these really high power, big positions and have really successful careers, but then they also do the escorting kind of on the side. This position obviously ends up being very financially lucrative, even though it sounds kind of outrageous and crazy. I mean, it's a book, but it definitely sounds insane. But this book in particular follows Marlo, who is a single mom to a very sick child who is in need of a heart transfer. And so she doesn't have a lot of money. She's been working on her own her whole life and doing this mom thing herself. And her best friend happens to work for Seraph, and she recommends her, and she ends up working for this man named Brendan. Now, most of the women that join this Seraph company are extremely high power, in charge, and experienced women. But Marlo is not that at all. She's very timid. She's very inexperienced, but she's smart enough to take on this role of being an executive. It's more so the other stuff that she's less sure of, but she's willing to do anything to make the money for her daughter's surgery. So she goes into this position. She's extremely inexperienced, but her boss does not realize this. In fact, he's kind of an asshole to her. He does not treat her very well at first, but she's kind of like, I need to just do this and it'll be done and I can quit after I make enough money. And you kind of see how their relationship ends up progressing and how she does with this job, how she handles it, especially because she is so inexperienced and it's just totally a new ball game for her. This book I found to be extremely entertaining. I think that the plot is a little bit crazy. It's a little bit outlandish and the characters are kind of intense, especially the male main character in this book. I think a lot of people think he's a bit crazy and controlling, but for a fun time, I enjoyed this book. I think what I did love about this book is how high stakes the situation is. Like, it's this mother who will do anything for her daughter, and she's put into this situation that's not ideal, and she's making it work, but eventually they do end up finding love for each other. And I don't know, I found it to be a really fun read. Is it my favorite book ever? Probably not. But if you think it sounds fun and you think you might enjoy that plot, I definitely do recommend you to read it. Next on my list is a little bit more of a lighthearted, fun read, and that is called Winning Bryn by Maisie Myers. This is a brother's best friend and single father nanny book. So this follows Bryn and Leo. Leo is a famous soccer player, and Bryn is actually an influencer, which is kind of fun. And they kind of have this ongoing beef with each other. They've never really seen eye to eye, despite Leo being best friends with Bryn's brother. And Bryn's brother ends up mentioning that she kind of needs more of a full-time job, and Leo obviously needs a nanny for his daughter. So they kind of get together and she ends up becoming the nanny for this girl, despite the fact that Leo is like, I don't even really trust her. I don't really know how I feel about this. But obviously, as time goes on, Bryn and his daughter end up having this bond with one another, and she works for him and he kind of starts to see her in a new light. I just think this book is super cute and reminiscent of like my favorite romances from back in the day. Like, there isn't some huge crazy plot. There definitely is a little bit of stuff that happens in the third act in this one that gets a little crazy, but I just kind of love the simplicity of a good brother's best friend. Like, sometimes it doesn't need to be the craziest plot ever. It can just be something cute like this. And you guys may also know that I just love a single parent nanny book. Like, that always does it for me. So I found this one to be really fun, and I feel like I've never heard anybody talk about it. Okay, the last book on my list is If You Stayed by Brittany Cherry. This is a really fun one, and I feel like I haven't heard anyone talk about it. This one follows Gabriel and Kiera, who were childhood best friends turned lovers, and they end up getting in a really tragic accident, and Gabriel ends up losing most of his memory and not remembering Kiera. And now, because this whole accident happened, his mother becomes extremely protective of him and basically takes him away from anything he's known. First off, Kiera doesn't want her to be around him anymore, despite the fact that she fully remembers everything. She was in the accident. She now has lost literally the love of her life, and she has to move on with her life. And she ends up getting married later on and having a daughter. Her husband is not very loving. He's just kind of this rich guy who goes off and does his own thing a lot of the time. And he is currently in the process of renovating their house. So he hires this architect, and the architect ends up showing up, and guess who it is? But Gabriel. So Kiera is immediately like, this is insane. I haven't seen him in years, and he obviously doesn't remember her. And so she kind of begins to battle this situation of, I've promised that I would never tell him who I am or remind him of our memories together, but now we're here face to face, and they start to have this connection again, because despite everything that's happened, their connection is just always going to be there. So she kind of has this whole inner battle of like, what do I do? He's starting to get confused because he's like, I feel such a strong attachment to this woman, but I don't even know her. What's going on? And it's just kind of how they end up navigating this whole situation and what ends up going on. I really love this one. This is definitely a plot that I feel like I've absolutely never read. I feel like a memory loss plot is always interesting, but this one in particular, I absolutely loved. I remember sitting and reading this in one sitting. It was that good, and I just could not put it down. So I highly recommend this one, especially if you're a big fan of a second chance romance. So that is going to do it for my underrated romance book recs for today, at least. We can always do a part 2, but I hope for now that you guys found a new romance book to read, and if you didn't, I'll be back next week with more recommendations. So I will see you guys very, very soon then. Bye!